I got interested this when I look around and see a lot of excessive consumption happening all around us. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so basically that has made me look at the reasons more in terms of management science-based reasons on why this kind of excessive habits or excessive behavior happen actually. So thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity. And I would take you actually through what I've written in my book actually. And I would like some of you to read it at least. Thank you very much once again. Yeah, let me start with this slide. I want you all to read it actually. And then I will start with my discourse. It's a little small, but can you all read it? Because you're all on your own laptops or computers.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll just briefly narrate. This is about a girl, her name is changed actually. She has come from a suburban background or non-urban background in Gujarat after doing her professional qualification, mass communication. The life story, the name is changed. It's come in Outlook Money. Sometime back, it came in 2008 actually. Okay, then she started living in the South Mumbai, the posh South Mumbai area. And suddenly she looked around and found a society which is very, very different from hers, including her colleagues at work. And that's where she started shunning her old clothes and Bada chapels and started moving on to Nikes and Lee Coopers and Christian Dior and Calvin Klein. Okay, which had a huge impact because she thought she had 40,000 salary and living alone. It was quite an amount actually. But her habits actually, especially shopping habits, etc. She found she was pressed for money and she was supposed to send at least rupees 5,000 home, which she was getting excused actually. But immediately she found like the credit cards and bank loans available, especially with a decent salary actually, which she had at that time. Okay, so look at that. She started buying a laptop, a desktop computer for her family, a scooter for herself, all on EMI and credit actually. And then within 1.5 years, she landed up in debt of 2 lakhs on her credit card and additional EMIs. And that's when she found the harassment from the collection agents, etc. She tried balancing money from one card to the other, which is very typical among many youngsters. Okay, I don't have to say youngsters, even among slightly aged actually. But soon she found things going out of hand because, like typically if you get into revolving credit, it's a big issue actually because you're being charged about 2.5% per month actually. And it's very, very difficult to get out of it unless you borrow and your family comes to help. Okay, so this kind of events which are commonly happening, like this has only increased. This is basically in 2005 actually, that has led me to look at what is the reason for these kind of actions or behavior from all kinds of people, and many of them educated actually. I've found even people with finance training actually, like chartered accountants, etc., getting into this kind of traps actually, or people who even teach finance actually. Okay, so basically when I looked at it, this is what it is actually: consumption for the sake of consumption. And when you talk about excessive consumption or such habits, we can't leave America, the wealthiest country, the place of such heavy consumption actually. Okay, typically when you look at America, statements like my closets are filled with still unopened items. That means you have bought things without looking at utility, and it's lying there. You never touched it even. Okay, so that's a case with a lot of homes, people, etc. actually. Okay, Faber and Ogden during late 80s did a study, and nearly 44% of the participants who took the survey said this actually, like they all agreed to this. Okay. And if you look at thrift stores, these are typically the resale stores where you can use where you can sell your unused items or little used items actually. You can see a lot of brand new clothes with original price tag still hanging from the sleeve actually. So this is typically symbolizing what you call as consumption for the sake of consumption or buying for the sake of buying. So we are not looking at your utility or requirement from the product, and we are getting into the purchase habits actually. Okay, trouble with shopping habits. Yeah, when we look at Americans, a lot of them, shopping has become a habit which has caused them a lot of trouble actually. 5.8% of American population suffer from disorders. Okay, and many of them take counseling and psychological treatment actually. And in many such cases, compulsive shopping habit has led to job losses, divorces, broken relationship, broken family, and financial ruin actually. These are all quoted actually in various journals and articles actually. Yeah, so excessive shopping habits, that's the area which we are looking at actually. And this many times can lead to what you call as shopaholism. Shopaholism is virtually a psychological disorder, a disease in that way. And this has created deep problems for the American society actually. So as Timothy Fong of psychiatrist at University of California says, like people have the it's not the lack of willpower of the truly addicted shopper, but it's actually about the surge or impulses. So this typically is showing tendencies of addiction actually, impulses and desires, which continue, which prolong them with the desire, even they want to get out of it actually. Okay, so what are the dangers of excessive consumption? Yeah, for many, shopping has moved beyond something that meet their needs and wants. It's a hobby. It's a hedonistic, pleasure-seeking goal. It's absolutely okay in boom times when things are all fine and you're having a job and you have enough disposable income. But these days, economic downturns are very common. And this brings in pressure. For example, the present COVID we had back in 2008. That's the time event, the time scene which I have taken actually, where I started this work actually. Okay, a lot of people lose their jobs. And this is a time you get into financial problems because you have your mortgages and you have your other bank loans all still there, and you are in a situation where you can't repay. And this makes you get into negative consequences. Okay, so living dangerously, spending beyond one's means. This is typically what America is. Most Americans spend much more than what they get actually. That means they live a life of debt actually. Like American households have spent more than their disposable income. 127% of disposable income was the household debt actually, which was 77% in 1990. Okay, so basically it's a society which is debt oriented. They live beyond their means, but there's a danger attached to it actually. America being a very rich country, etc., and the population is limited. People are able to manage that actually because they have unemployment support, etc., from the government. Okay, look at this. Most households there have 12 to 13 credit cards, with 40% of them having revolving credit outstanding. I've talked about revolving credit at the start of this presentation. This is the most costliest debt you can get into. I think most of you know it, isn't it? If you look at the amount this debt, the credit card companies charge, it's 2.5% a month. So when you annualize it, it comes to 30% a year. Okay, so that's a kind of debt, and many times this credit card company very conveniently give it actually. This is the amount you have to pay this month for your last month's bill, but you can always pay a smaller amount and leave the balance, and you can pay it later. But the thing is, the balance amount which you leave is what they called as revolving credit. And they charge interest on it every month actually for what is not paid. Okay, so in 2000, we are still talking about the US. In 2004, credit card revolving debt stood at $735.3 billion, and it was increasing 31% every year actually. Now, the most dangerous side of it, personal bankruptcy filings in US doubled between 1994 and 2002 to more than 1.5 million. Okay, Americans over the age of 55 are filing bankruptcy in greater numbers. Okay, because it's a very competitive world. After 40 to continue in your job or getting new jobs becomes difficult because you're the younger people coming and they have more relevant skills and technology is changing, etc. So this is where you get ended up actually. A lot of them were getting bankrupt actually. Okay, now looking back, is our situation very different? We were supposed to be a debt-averse society, but if you look at the recent past, say from late 80s or 90s to the current, there's been a lot of change actually. In 1998, just 4.7% of urban India was earning more than 81,000. By 2008, this has grown to 14.8%. And if you look at a salary of 1,60,000, the 1.5% getting that amount in 1998. And this figure has escalated to 5.3% by 2008. This period is important because this is the time when we saw the real effects of liberalization and globalization coming in. This is a time period where the software and the BPO, BPO, isn't it? BPO and KPO based boom came in actually. And a lot of service industries also moved, consultancy and service industry moved it actually. And youngsters were getting into plush jobs with a lot of money actually. Okay. So a lot of disposable income, if you look at, there was an explosive increase in the disposable income. Now, along with increase in the income, what happened was the higher expenditure also. This is very typical of the society world over actually. The more the money we get, we start spending more, not that our savings increases. And the young and broke was a more common theme by 2008 actually. Indians have been taking more loans, including personal loans. I say personal loans because these are the most costlier debt instruments actually. Okay, which are considered to be a high cost debt instrument. Yeah, this is just to show you the statistics of that period actually. Look, home loans 9.9% to 21.6%. Good because you have an asset with you. Car loans, again there's depreciation, but still there's an asset value. Two-wheelers, look at the 8.8 to 11. Personal loans, look at the quantum jump actually, 8.5 to 29.2%. And on the other side, personal loans is basically what you buy for household appliances or things like that. Okay. And generally banks charge highest actually because it's a non-priority lending actually. And this is the time, like if you look at early 90s, getting a credit card was very difficult, and even debit cards because very few ATMs, etc. Okay, credit cards were given only to people with that kind of credit worthiness, etc. But then they also, like most of our banks, also started following the typical Western or the American system actually, where they started giving to non-prime customers actually. Okay, so that started in India also, and that's why. Look, we see a sudden boost actually, like from 32 million in 2003 to 44 million. Look at the kind of jump. There was hardly very few people holding cards in 90s. Okay, and if you look at present 2019 statistics, credit cards, there are 50.3 million people who credit cards actually in circulation, and total numbers have increased to 890 million. This explosion has basically happened because of like number of ATMs coming up, and almost all bank for their saving accounts are giving ATM cards which are clubbed with debit cards actually. Yeah, again, our situation very different. Yeah, what has happened is, along with increase in our credit, personal loans, etc., reports show that, CRISIL report shows that the asset quality of retail loans has deteriorated in the recent years, with larger number of people taking these kind of personal loans, which was basically to support their higher expenditure and buying activities. More and more people were finding it difficult to repay actually. And it's basically in personal loans, credit card receivables, and auto loans where there was weakening actually. And more NPAs obviously was, you know what is NPA, isn't it? Non-performing assets of Indian banks actually. This is the area where NPAs were increasing actually. Now, the whole question, the two questions coming up, one is for the individual, other is on a macro level for the nation and all of us. Is such levels of consumption sustainable? Yeah, basically I brought this point actually because when you look at the luxury segment, which is about 233 billion in 2008, US alone accounted for 1/3 consumption actually, okay? And the rich upper class, which comprises of just 20% of the global population, account for 80% of private consumption. That means what large consumption which we see, the majority is from the rich Western world, and maybe you can include Japan and now some of these Gulf countries actually. Yes, but primarily it's America. Okay, the rich consumes, like look at this, the rich 20% has 87% of the cars in the world, 74% of the mobile connections or telephone connections. They consume 84% of the paper produced, 45% of meat and fish consumed, and 58% of the total energy. Okay, but the whole yeah, sorry, like there was a chat, I was just looking at it. Yeah, okay, so when the question of sustainability comes, this is what one of the well-known writers in the area of materialism, etc., Tim Kasser, he says like humans, in particularly in the Western hemisphere, are consuming resources at a pace that far outweighs Earth's ability to renew these resources and absorb the resultant waste. Like clean air, forests, water, everything is polluted. We are coming to a difficult situation. So that's about the sustainability factor. But my focus is not on that actually. My focus is on the individual consumer. What happens to the individual consumer when he or she gets into this kind of habits actually? Yeah, okay, so before I move on, I should explain what is status consumption, which is the topic of today's webinar. Okay, I think you can easily understand actually. We buy a lot of products. We have shown some of those luxury products actually, Saint, Louis Vuitton, Cartier, the top-end cars like Rolls-Royce, Audi, BMW. Okay, people basically buy these cars to confer and symbolize status on them actually. These are the products which are called status products. So status consumption is the motivational process by which individuals strive to improve their social standing through conspicuous consumption of products that they confer and symbolize status. So they buy these products and they have to conspicuously consume. Conspicuous consumption means you overtly use them in front of others, isn't it? So that people know you have that. And many times there's a status attached to it, because many times somebody driving around a BMW or a Porsche, you look at him and then our thing is like, yeah, he's successful, he's made a lot of money, isn't it? Okay, So that kind of a social thing is what is driving status consumption. Okay, now we saw there's a lot of excessive consumption. So basically, my research was to find out what causes such excessive consumption. And obviously, if you start delving into literature, you'll immediately find that the main cause of such consumerist behavior or buying of material products is basically materialism, actually. Okay, so materialism, as Bell had defined it, is a selfish desire to have more than what others have. I think Kerala society, etc., is very famous for this, actually, isn't it? It drives individual into such consumption habits, and it's considered to be the inherent characteristics of materialistic individuals. So basically, we are living in a society where possessions, what you have, the house which you have, the car which you drive, or other things which you project in front of the public as a sign of success, actually. That's what is given, actually. So possessions assume a central place in a person's life, once you are materialistic. And your whole life gets oriented to acquiring and owning these kind of goods. So materialism reflects the importance a consumer attaches to worldly possessions and acquisitions. There have been different connotations, definitions of materialism, but I'm looking purely from the marketing consumer behavior angle, actually, in terms of consumption related angle. Okay, now a number of studies have concluded effectively that individuals orient to materialistic values when they experiences family circumstances that do not help them feel secure. So many of the earlier studies, especially in the Western society, have shown that people or children coming from these kind of backgrounds where their needs were not looked after or their security was not ensured, or like through harsh and strict parenting, or like neglectful parenting, actually, which happens in the case of single parents, divorced parents, actually, single mother, etc. Okay, so they can lead into, because they feel a state of deprivation at the young age, and then when they get out of it, move into youth, start to work, when they get money, they have this craving to get all those things which they didn't have in the younger age, actually, okay, which they never could have, actually. People who have people who have not had their needs well met in the past will come to think that wealth and possessions will bring in a permanent solution from all their deprivation. And basically they feel that this will bring in happiness, etc., actually. But most of the studies have proved that materialistic people have lower self-satisfaction, lower self-actualization than non-materialistic people. Basically, they are more unhappy. And they keep on getting into this acquisition and adding possession kind of cycle, thinking that these possessions will bring them happiness, actually. Okay, so as we looked at in the earlier slide, especially with the felt deprivations at young age, etc., self-esteem or low self-esteem was considered to be the contributor of materialism. What is self-esteem? It's basically feeling of lack of worth, or like, I'm not good enough, those kind of feelings, actually. Okay, like it's about doubts of their own competence or self-worth, and many individuals, to compensate for this, buy fashionable things, or what you call as prestige products, etc. And this has been observed in society for very long, actually. Like if you look at this, many adolescent boys, because adolescence is the time when you have a problem with your self-confidence, actually, because you're neither a child or a adult, actually. So that transition stage brings in a lot of dilemma in many people, actually. And many people, or many boys at that age use branded garments, fashion accessories, body sprays and colognes, sunglasses, electronic gadgets, two-wheelers. Maybe in Western society, it's cars, etc., to sag their masculine self-confidence. So because they see a reflection of these products, or they try to build a persona through these products which they own actually and try to project them. Okay, so basically, if you look at the earlier work in the direction of materialism, it was said to be contributed by low self-esteem, as it's shown in this pictorial representation. And these were supposed to be the contributing factors. Okay, like many studies of Rosenberg, a lot of those people of that time period. Okay, look at this: authoritarian or permissive parenting styles, too strict parenting. Then this is about single parenting, actually, non-intact family structure or broken homes. Then you have poverty or poor economic environment while growing up. And the last is related to unmet safety and security needs. Okay, so these were supposed to create low self-esteem or low self-worth in people. And they were obviously seen as contributors to materialism, actually. Many of the earlier studies were in this direction, actually. But when we look at the non-Western societies, especially Asian, Indian, Eastern societies, we give a lot of importance to family, and the children are well taken care of. Even parents many times struggle to provide children with what they need and see that they get educated. So many of these things doesn't, okay, poverty obviously is there, but many of these other things are much lesser in Asian conditions. But you find materialism in Asian countries also, even in India actually. Okay, materialism can be actually measured. There are scales for doing it actually. Okay, so this is where people started bringing socialization factors or society-related factors to contribute to materialism. And it's not very clear. Many people say the socialization factors actually help in creating low self-esteem. Like, it may not be a case of low self-esteem because of the childhood factors, but it can be created by later things, actually. Okay. What are these factors? These factors are typically peer pressure, or what we call as reference group. Basically, like, you would have felt that many of you students, you came from different colleges and came to Marian Institute. I'm sure like you found a lot of others using certain gadgets, or you didn't have that smartphone or laptop and you forced your parents to get that for you. Your dressing styles would have changed. A lot of girls would have started using some amount of cosmetics. If it's in other countries, it would be far different. Okay, that's what is reference group pressure or peer group pressure. Then there can be social comparisons, addiction to media, especially TV, etc. Actually, we look at one by one these. Okay, so primarily the key factor which most people associate materialism or social pressure factor to materialism is peer pressure. Research studies, and I'm sure like you know what is peer pressure, especially marketing students. You learn it actually as reference group pressure. Okay, this is basically the pressure on the naive subject to conform to group's norms. Okay, when you come from one background to another, when you get a job and you join an organization, I'm sure like you will change actually. Your wardrobes will change, the kind of products you use will change. Okay. And if you join a bank, etc., you will move into more subtle clothes and more conservative dressing styles. Okay, so people accept the information provided by their peer groups, and you start accepting these kind of products which are used by them. And the peer pressure can also come from your neighbors, actually. Okay. So these are typically a large influence on people, actually, when they look around in our society, actually. Like you move from your college and start settling in a bigger city, as we looked at the beginning about that girl Mary's case, actually. It's all about your environment putting a lot of pressure on you, actually. Look at this. Group pressure is very valid actually when it comes to shopping behavior. A study of in-store shopping behavior indicated that when we buy in a group, compared to going for shopping individually, we buy a lot of things, or there is more changes in your shopping plans. Actually. Because many times group behavior changes your plans actually. You may not have planned to buy something, but then everybody, the group is picking it up, so you'll also start buying it actually. Okay, so people end up buying more and many unplanned items when they shop in groups as compared to shopping alone. This is just to indicate the effect of group pressure on shopping habits actually. Okay, now this is a classic thing actually. Media has always been having an impact on us, on our consumption habits actually, or basically our attitude. Look, television channels across the world portray rich and affluent lifestyles which cater more to fantasies and desires of individuals. I'm just talking about the soap serials or the serials which our households across Kerala are hooked to, or across India are hooked to actually. Look at those serials actually. The person would be working as a clerk in a office, but look at his lifestyle. He will have a double-storied house with all kind of amenities. So many times it's a fantasy world that is created actually. And look at the kind of intensity and concentration with which people watch them. So what happens in the process is internalization of such values. And if you look at the Hindi serials, it's a lot more. And obviously Western, okay, we needn't compare actually. Okay. So basically we start to feel like unless we live like that, unless we have a BMW car or a house with 5 bedrooms, etc., we are not okay. Okay. That's the exact thing actually. So this is what is happening. And this has been there from the past actually. Before TV came in, obviously, we had this Manorama and Mangalam with their, what do you call as Nindagadas, isn't it? Or Kottayam Pushparajan's detective works. They have been molding attitudes actually. Like okay. Same. The media has a huge influence, especially when you look at the advertisements and the serials actually. So this in turn develops a high penchant for acquiring more and more material possessions. These are widely researched areas. There's enough of proof in literature about this actually, and there is ways of comparing about TV addiction also. Like you have scales to measure the effect of TV on consumption actually. And if you look at the earlier, like what these serials, soap serials, etc., do is they make us get into social comparisons actually. Social comparison is basically, look at this, there's a line here. It can be both in upward direction and downward direction. Downward direction is good because we start looking at how people below us, the poor, those who are poverty stricken, etc., builds in compassion in us. Okay, that's good traits. Upward, we start evaluating with the richer, the celebrities. That's what happens many times actually. Like as Festinger rightly said, this has been there. Like this theory is from 1954. Sorry. Okay. Festinger said like normally people evaluate because we want a self-reference to find out where we stand actually, to evaluate our opinions and abilities. These upward comparisons with dissimilar or distant reference such as celebrities and models is problematic because such individuals starts getting into unrealistic standards of living because they think unless I am like that, unless I own those things, unless I behave like that, then I'm not living a life of worth actually. Okay? So this leads to development of larger than normal gap between idealized and actual living conditions. That definitely is an indication of degrading or lowering your self-worth or self-esteem. And definitely you try to cover up by buying products which you can consume in front of others, or status products actually. So status consumption spree and materialism can be the effects of this kind of behavior. Okay, so we looked at some of the key social factors which are beyond the childhood things which can create materialism. But beyond all this, there's something called easy availability of debt and adding fuel to fire. That's why I brought in the topic of the explosive availability of credit cards or the non-prime lending habits of the banks, etc. Right at the beginning, actually, because easy availability of debt adds fuel to fire, actually. Okay, consumer finance world over has assumed connotations of subprime lending. Okay, this is what I was trying to say in the beginning, actually, in 90s, or even now, like, for example, if you approach a bank and want to buy something, a car or a house, they ask for all kinds of things, actually, and they finally ask you to keep collateral. Okay, but when it comes to subprime lending, you start giving money to people who may not have the potential to provide a collateral or may not have the ability to repay in case something happens to him. You understand what I'm saying? Like right now you have a salary certificate, but these jobs are not permanent. An economic downturn or a massive shake in the economy, which as we see, which is very commonly happening, what will happen actually? So many of such people are being given loans actually. Subprime lending was the reason for the crash in 2008, the financial crash in 2008, where many of those big names like Lehman Brothers, Morgan Stanley, etc., disappeared actually. Okay. Now look at this actually, effect of credit cards and other credit mechanisms. Okay. Studies which compared actual consumer transactions of consumers by using credit cards found that those paying with credit cards spent more or were willing to spend more than those paying through cash. There are umpteen number of studies actually. You send two people into a store, give one cash, the other credit card. The person who has spent with credit card may not be able to recall the total amount spent or the values or the worth of products which he bought. Sorry, the value of the product which he bought. While somebody who went in and shopped with cash will be able to exactly say how much he has spent. I'm saying like these are there on the receipt, but generally if you ask actually. So basically credit card takes off the sensitiveness of spending from you because you're not paying immediately. Okay. So look at this, an experiment where subjects bid for tickets for a sporting event. This was conducted by Prelak and Sinester, showed that those who used credit cards had bid higher amounts compared to those who opted for cash payment. Number of exercises have proved this actually. When you spend with credit cards, you spend more. Okay. Or what you call as your aversion is taken off. That's what is shown here. Normally, we may not, all of us may not very strictly write down our expenditures, etc. But we always do mental budgeting. Most of the intelligent people do mental budgeting actually. That's basically based on the past. What is the total amount available? That is available income effect. And our purchase behavior generally should be guided by these budgeted figures actually. Okay, but what happens when you use credit cards is there is a time lag between the actual payment and when you make the transaction. Okay, so when such a separation comes in, the aversiveness to spending drops actually. That means when you're paying with cash, you just take it from your wallet, count it and give, and you know how much is their balance actually. Okay, so that kind of tight-fistedness is not there when you are using your credit card. You just take it out, swipe it and come on. You may not even look at the billing amount. I do it actually. Okay, I've been using credit cards. I make all my grocery, all those purchases with credit card, but I see that every month end I clear it off because I had a bad experience of keeping revolving credit about 25 years back when I learned actually, and I'm very careful. I just made it one credit card, but I do a lot of spending with that. But I see that every month and yeah, the previous month's bills are clear. But a lot of people don't do it actually because people see because the credit card companies keep adding your what is called the credit limit. And many people think the credit limit is something which is allowed for you to spend. No. It is, you can avail it because it's given to you based on your repayment habits, etc., or credit worthiness, but always ensure whether you have repayment capacities when you use that. These are things which are not taught by these people actually. And this is the reason why many people get into consumption traps actually. Because when you get into status consumption, especially without acknowledging what you are and what your background is and what your income asset base is, many times you can get into problem. And that is what typically America, etc., has shown to us actually. But there, the social system can help you. In a country like ours, you're going to do. Okay, so research shows, as Father Regin was rightly saying, advertisement and marketing communications create superordinate goals. So many times needs in us. Consumers do get affected by this. So we get into a goal setting behavior. And many times these kind of goals are non-conscious, as we said in the case of addiction to TV, social comparisons, group buying, etc. Okay, so many times we get into purchase of luxury or prestigious products because of these non-conscious goals which get getting into us. And how that can be controlled is basically exposure to associations, either of, like controlling it should be by exposing to associations of thrift actually. Okay, if you are getting into associations of prestige or status oriented goals, you will continue with your consumption for the sake of consumption actually. Yeah, I'm through. So basically what is happening is many people, when it comes to purchase decisions, we all have a locus of control actually. Okay, many times the locus of control, which is supposed to be within us, that means we take very conscious, calculated, prudent decisions, but that doesn't happen. That is where you say your LOC is outside. It is being controlled by environmental factors, what others have, etc., or typically in terms of materialism, the greed factor. Okay, that's when you get into responsible financial behavior actually. Okay, most people with this high consumption behavior, materialism, have external LOC problem. Okay, so this is what I have to say. Thank you.